It's Charter Local Edition. Brad Pomerance here, joined by Alex Johnson. He is a member of the Board of Education in Los Angeles County. He is also the executive director of the Children's Defense Fund of California. In that capacity, he has been active on an issue that at first glance, we may not realize the impact of it, but it can impact our youth dramatically, and let's go through it if we may, sir. I want to talk about transportation, public transportation. And sometimes kids, they get on the bus, they get on the subway, they don't pay.
Yeah.
It happens. Yeah. Talk to us about what happens now when a kid does that.
Well, young people are receiving tickets and infractions, and they're having to pay significant fines for jumping turnstiles or for going into trains without paying. It's symptomatic of the cycle of poverty and the challenges of poverty that so many young people in underprivileged communities are facing.
But the key element, as I understand, sir, is those tickets. Even though it's a ticket, it is handled through the criminal justice system. And that's where significant issues can develop. Explain what happens, because that ticket, even though it's a ticket, winds up in criminal justice.
Well, it starts their interaction with the criminal justice system. That's the biggest thing, and it's one of the biggest pipelines to the juvenile justice system here in LA County. You know that LA County has the largest juvenile justice system. And so this is a huge factor for young people, particularly black and brown young people in LA County.
And we've discussed the school to prison pipeline, which continues to grow despite the fact that significant efforts are being made to try to limit this mass incarceration. But we forget that, okay, a kid gets a ticket for jumping a turnstile. The fine is, I'm guessing, $99. $99 is a lot of money for a kid in poverty. He doesn't pay the ticket because he doesn't have the money. Then what happens?
The fine increases. And then it increases again. I mean, we know what happens when you get a traffic ticket. And then you can get a warrant out. You can have to come back to court.
And then you try to get your driver's license. You get pulled over for speeding, and there's a warrant for your arrest. You're 17 years old, and what happens?
And you've started your entryway into the criminal justice system.
And that's your concern. And it all started because of a mistake.
Of a mistake, but of a extremely minimal amount that was not paid, where you may have been trying to get to school or trying to get to a job, and that is impacted because you cannot pay the basic fare. And so many kids, so many young people in LA County and across the state have that issue.
And I have a memory. It's kind of interesting. When I was in 7th or 8th grade, around there, I took the bus to school, and the bus had been free. And then Prop 13 passed. And then the bus wasn't free. Now, fortunately, my parents were able to pay, I think it was $120 a year. Those were the days. And so I could take the bus. There's no more free school buses, or they're minimal. Are there? I'm not even sure.
Extremely minimal. Okay. So, I mean, most of the time you're seeing it for young people who are in the special education department. So most young people are having to navigate their way to get to school in particular. And a lot of young people who we work with are crossing multiple boundaries, having to take multiple bus lines, multiple train lines, just to get to school, getting up at 4 or 5 in the morning, just to be at school so they can get a quality education, because the schools in their area do not have the resources and capacity are not up to par to serve these young people.
So you've been working with Senator Bob Hertzberg, who I know has been looking at criminal justice reform generally and looking at, for example, traffic tickets for adults that wind up multiplying and turning into arrest warrants. And you, working with Senator Hertzberg, have come up with a solution, at least on this one issue. It's known as SB 882, is that right, sir?
That's correct.
And what is SB 882 looking to do?
SB 882 will really change the status quo for young people, particularly young people who are poor, in changing the criminalization, decriminalizing fines and infractions as relates to transit.
And that's exactly what I understand the bill does. Literally, the punishment isn't necessarily going away.
No.
Because if you jump a turnstile, you should be punished. Yeah. But you're transferring it into an administrative proceeding.
Exactly.
Through an administrative law judge.
Instead of the criminal court.
And that changes the whole dynamic. So, there's no interaction with the criminal justice system. Yeah. It's an infraction, shouldn't do it. Yeah. You know, we'll deal with that.
And there will still be a fine, still be a fine paid. But
or community service if that's appropriate.
Yeah. But to have an ALJ, an administrative law judge, rather than a criminal court judge determining the fate of a young person for something that should not be criminalized in the first place is important.
What I think is a pretty, if I can say, neat ramification of this is, where did the fines go when they were paid under the prior system?
The fines went back into the originated the entity, in which the kids were even trying to
through the criminal justice system.
Tried to go.
So now with the ALJ, the fines can actually go into the transit system.
Which makes sense, because one of the biggest goals is getting these young people to have reduced or free access to transit, so that they can get to the places where they need to go until they are not caught up in the criminal justice system here in LA County.
So there's news with regard to SB 882. It's not easy to get a bill passed by both houses. Did this bill pass both houses?
It has, just last week.
Right, it passed.
And it's headed to the governor's desk.
Right, so as we speak, we don't know if the governor will sign it. We'll see what happens. Are you feeling good?
I'm feeling good. Right. I'm feeling good.
I know that the governor, because of the Supreme Court ruling on prison overcrowding, he's been wary about adding criminal penalties. Yeah. This is not adding criminal penalties.
Well, it goes in line with what the governor has been doing with respect to Proposition 57, which will end direct file of young people.
Oh, I know what you're saying.
And will allow, rather than prosecutors make the decision, judges. So this is in line with his criminal justice reform, juvenile justice reform work. Whether it's reducing the number of young people in DJJ, this is squarely in line with it, and I hope he signs this bill.
Can you talk us through the movement to I'll just say it this way, I'm not sure how to say it perfectly, but to decriminalize poverty? Yeah. Could you talk us through that movement?
It is, look, when you think about children who are poor, young people who are poor, they're often black and brown young people.
Right.
They have been, up until now, and hopefully when the governor signs it, have been criminalized through issues of transit and trying to get access. They've been criminalized in school with respect to school push-outs.
Suspensions.
School suspensions, expulsions, again, children of color who are poor. And they are criminalized in a number of different ways, whether it's traffic stops, whether it's racial profiling, which the propensity of that exists more in areas where there are people of color. And so there is an ongoing movement. It may not be a movement that is organized and
left, right, and center, we are looking at criminal justice.
People are there. This state, when you think about what happened with Prop 47 and the passage of Prop 47, when you think about the way that this state has trended in terms of pushing for substantive reform and thinking and understanding and recognizing that we can't lock ourselves up out of this problem, that we have to actually tackle the underlying roots of poverty.
His name is Alex Johnson. He is a member of the Board of Education in LA County, Executive Director of the Children's Defense Fund of California. My name is Brad Pomerance, Charter Local Edition.